All right. Good morning, Nick.
Hi, good morning, Doc.
So I'm so honored to have you here doing this segment. We met a couple of weeks ago, just not too long ago at all, and you were starting to share your story and tell me about the things that you're doing now in a public forum to be able to get word out about PTSD and about trauma. And I said, we need to do this together. I think that this is such a powerful and impactful way to for people to be able to grow and to hopefully learn from you and make their lives better and realize that we're all in this together and nobody's better than anybody else, right? We all have struggles.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you're doing this. Just for the people who are watching, Nick Lorenz, Scottsdale Fire, you worked there for 12 years, I'm so eager to hear your story. I'll keep quiet, and if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling us about you and your background, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Doc. Really appreciate that. And I'm equally as honored to be here. When I received that call, it was, this is the way God, the universe just does things and puts the right alignments into place. But again, my name's Nick. I'm talking to you from Mesa, Arizona, where I live. And I grew up, though, in Eugene, Oregon, far from here. And I grew up with I'm a second generational firefighter. And I was born in Portland. And as you and I were just talking, it's kind of important because forever, until the last 3 years, I was born and raised in Eugene, Oregon.
Mm,
Never mind the first 10 years of my life in Portland. But the reason I left that out, like we were just talking and discussing, is you know childhood stuff I buried, and like a lot of us do, I said don't be dramatic. You just had a rough older brother. It's hard to comprehend that when you're born to 6 years old, what you're taking and what you're receiving. You don't know those things. You don't know cognitive. You don't know the neural stuff. You're just being programmed. And what was going on early in my childhood was not pretty. Divorces, broken home, and a mom doing the best she could with three young kids. Living in an apartment, two bedrooms. It's my sister and her and my brother and I. She's at the hospital, wants to be a nurse someday and take care of her kids. She meets a guy. He's a current paramedic. He's testing like all of us, right? You're working for the box or the ambulance, and he's in Portland working, and he's trying to get hired with Eugene Fire. So during that time, growing up there, it was just a lot of alone time. This is also the 80s, 84, 85. So it was not a lot of supervision, but I had an older brother that was 8 years older than me. There was verbal abuse, physical abuse, um, other forms of minor, inappropriate abuses and whatnot. And I just didn't know. When I expressed these things to my parents, it was often overlooked, or they were busy, or maybe there would be a talking, he would deny it all. So at 10 years of age, and I'm only telling you that because it's very important, what happened thereafter, Doc. And my dad gets hired with Eugene Fire. My brother's 18 and I'm 10. He departs for the Army. We moved to Eugene and a fresh start. I completely eliminated the first 10 years of my life. New start, born and raised in Eugene, Oregon.
mm,
Won't talk about that stuff ever again. Won't talk about what happened. Ugly, ugly, just let's go on. Well, I didn't realize I was now a scared, sensitive, anxious, insecure kid. That's all I'd known. Here's this guy that came into my life, trying to do the best he can with three kids. I can't imagine. I have biological kids and one adopted, but they're family. So when I look at that dynamic, that was probably very difficult. Testing for Eugene Fire, working as a paramedic, going through all the things that first responders go through while newly married. He, he wasn't exactly the father that I needed at the time. At the time, again, very sensitive. He was more old school, tough love, which served me good in the long run. Some of that tough love really helped. But at the time, I was just deathly scared of him. I wanted approval. I wanted to hear, Nick, I am so proud of you. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that what my brother had said and programmed me for 10 years wasn't true. That I wasn't this weak, worthless piece of, pussy, excuse my language. All of the inappropriate things to a 5-year-old that just doesn't understand
Mm-hmm.
why this older brother was so domineering on him. So we moved to Eugene, and a fresh start, game on. And that's where I kind of start my story in life. And I never really mentioned the first 10 years. And really, I buried that and cut that kid off. And I did not know that until later in therapy. It took years of therapy as we peeled the onion back. As my counselor said, you have a closet full of different events or issues in your life, from childhood to military to 12 to 15 years in public safety. They've imploded and came out, and we're going to put them back together and reshuffle them in the closet nice and neat. Well, we've been doing that and working on that for 4 years. Um, and I said, at one point I said, is there any more boxes? I mean, come on, how much is going on up here? And just for clarification, I was diagnosed with a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, I'm going to save that for a little bit on what I thought PTSD was and who it was for. Boy, the misnomers and the perceptions and the stigmas we have surrounding these things ended up getting me in the end. So that said, and that's one of the biggest messages. I know too many good people right now currently working, or unfortunately post-retirement, that still to this day can't acknowledge why they have so many problems, why they're in constant pain, why they are a raging alcoholic, why they hate themselves in life, and they just spent 35 years doing the best job ever, and they just don't know how to cope. But God forbid you say PTSD. So we moved to Eugene, and my mom's working as a nurse. And my dad's a firefighter. I mean, I grew up, it was in my DNA, they say, my blueprint. Middle school and high school were fine. Just, pretty much as anyone would go through middle school and high school. Not a lot of issues, but my buddy, my senior year, I didn't know what I was going to do. And he decided he was joining the Marines. And I said, you are absolutely insane. Why would you do that? I'm going to go to the University of Oregon, chill out, be like every other Eugenian, that's the easy life, right? And I had an epiphany at 17, my senior year. And I said, Nick, you're going to wake up at 42 and regret never going in and having done that and spent 4 years of your youth doing exactly what Andy's going to go do. And he's been trying to sell you on. So I didn't have the courage to ever. Remember, he was kind of like, we were Batman and Robin. He was Batman, I was his Robin. He would not admit that, but he had charisma. He was the athlete. He had the girls, I would get their friends. So it was a really nice compliment. It worked very well. And, he's a good looking guy. And by the way, we met in 5th grade, saw him 2 days ago, still 32 years later, you cannot separate us. Yeah, so that's been a really good part of the story. But he goes in, he has the courage to do this. He convinces me to come. There's no way I do that without him. So to this day, I thank him for that, because the military is definitely what you make of it. You go in expecting to get something, you might be sorely, disappointed. Like I've run into people who certainly have that tone and attitude. But it tells me a lot about, maybe them in the service. So high school, I did anything I could to please my dad. He was a golfer. I played golf. He loved wrestling. I wrestled. And guess what? I did very good at those things. Anything to get his approval. I just needed some verbal. I was so insecure. I was so a mess. I just wanted to hear, hey, man, you're killing it. You're doing great. All those things as a 13, 14, 15-year-old. Just whatever the goalpost was, it kept getting moved back, and I kept chasing it. I kept climbing that ladder, rung after rung, and it just, I just couldn't quite get his approval. So when I announced to my parents that I'm going in the Marines, my dad was adamantly against it. And this is what he sat down and told me many times. You can't hack that, Nick. Straight up, I'm being very honest with you. You are a very sensitive, insecure, you're not tough like that. Camping and fishing and all the outdoor stuff, you're not the tough guy. you're not the one getting in there. And you're not just going in the Navy or Air Force, you're going in the Marines. And he goes, I'm really concerned. But he also, in addition, added, I'm also concerned that you may have to watch your friend die. And he had seen that, I mean, not from military operations, but just from at that point, 20 years, I guess what was 16 years in EMS fire.
Mm-hmm.
He was worried, he knows what he's done. And he would tell me those things. And he's like, you don't want to experience these. The more he convinced me or tried to convince me I shouldn't go, the more it drove me to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I officially went, Andy and I did go in on what was before a buddy program, but we got separated in boot camp, and that was the last time we ever got separated. Here's a little gee whiz for anyone that's a mathematician, statistician, engineer. We go into the military, and we're in the School of Infantry in Camp Pendleton, California. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry, I'm reminiscing now, 25 years ago. But this is important. Every infantry Marine, and when I say every, 96% get stationed right there in 1st Marines. A few unfortunate souls will go to Cuba. And a few of you lucky bastards, as they put it, are going to Kaneohe Bay. When I heard that, I did not my name, but Kaneohe Bay, I'm like, where's that? Just no idea. It's Hawaii, by the way.
Oh, Hawaii, yeah.
Yeah. So when I heard Lorenz, McMillan, there was 5 of us out of an infantry class of a couple hundred, a couple plus 200. And this sergeant goes, you gotta be effing kidding me. Lorenz, McMillan, and we're going to Hawaii. So we went to Hawaii, same platoon, same squad, same team. They don't even know. We're not on a program. Then we deploy to Japan quickly thereafter, and he sees a recon poster at the gym or the chow hall. I'm like, what is recon? This guy led the ship the whole way. So we prepare for a few months, and we go and do what's called an indoctrination. And it was a 1-night, 1-day event to see if you could hack it before we even consider bringing you over for what would then be 3 to 6 month probation. Okay, so I'm going off a little bit there, but it was really important. Andy was instrumental in leading me in the Marines, and I'm in debt to him forever. But what he was doing was also helping me see how much potential I had, along with the Marines. He kicks down doors. He's just a go-getter, and I wasn't at the time, but he showed me how that's possible. And I came out of the Marines, and this was my thought coming out. Just spent 4 years in the Marines, 3 of those in special forces units. Not something I really talk about a whole lot either, because that's just kind of that just seemed like the motto. And secondly, was I served with what I consider the most elite, real heroes. I was a fly on a wall. I was a 19, 20-year-old kid with 35, 40-year-old men. Not all of them are 35 and 40. Late 20s, 30s, families. And we just felt so out of place. And I mean, we got in, we did all the training. They were extremely hard on us. We went to the schools. We went on to the special operator schools. It was great. A lot of training. But I always say I got to experience 3 years of special operations, not ever really have to do anything, but we were a part of a beautiful peacekeeping mission, a humanitarian mission in Indonesia during the East Timor conflict in 1998, 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. Little side story here too. In recon and special forces training, I don't want to talk too much about the military, but we're telling a story here, and this is a big chapter of it. Recon, we trained with SEALs a lot, and I mean a lot. Green Berets, excuse me. And it depended on the training. If we were doing close quarter combat battle and they changed the names, we would do all of that with the SEALs and on our own, taught by government agencies, really cool stuff, just awesome. Well, we have to do a real mission in Indonesia to help out the Australians. We were working with the Australian SAS, but the admiral said no boots will go on to land in Indonesia. Not one American soldier. We're there as a presence to support the Australians. This is their conflict. Very adamant. Well, now we got to go do a mission. Well, who's he going to take? His SEAL team or the recon team? This is after 5 months of training, not for this, but just training together. He's watched us all. Here's the facts of this SEAL team. I believe is 5 and us between the two. Because I don't want to generalize and be broad. They were so good in the water, and we were better on land. This particular groups, we could throw a 100-pound pack on and get 6 miles away through the jungle and get right there. No GPSs. Okay, this is a compass and map. All right, we did have GPSs, but it always had to be used as backup. So we get tagged with this mission. It's some spying. One platoon was going to go do some reconnaissance. Go figure. And the other one was going to come in and assist with some stuff. And we got tasked with it. So it was a big win for us. And the SEALs were very, very sore. So we got to bust their chops the rest of the time. Flawless mission. And then we went in, our same platoon, more of us did humanitarian work. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. But I also at the time was struggling, Doc, with our role in America, in the world. Our role in the world, 1920. What does a 1920-year-old think about a lot? Well, if you're at the University of, Massachusetts, you're definitely being indoctrinated into a style of thinking. It's just, I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying, there's an indoctrination everywhere. And I was just, from Eugene, Oregon, right? Not Portland, from Eugene. And, you kind of grow up there. It's very liberal, but I'm very also conservative. Not every one state or city is all alike. And I just am kind of struggling. I'm so proud of this Marine stuff, but what are we doing here? Let me tell you what we're doing. I mean, a lot of people say different things over the last 20 years, because a lot of my special operator friends did go to Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan. And I don't want to go there because I wasn't there. Let you talk to those guys. But my experience was this: when we were there to assist with humanitarian goods and needs, I saw the absolute devastation of a conflict, of a civil war, and that there are helpless people out there that don't play by the same rules as us. Was barbaric. So that was for the first time when I said, I see what we're doing now. War, maybe we do have our hands in the cookie jars. Folks, there's good reasons sometimes. There's really good reasons why. So a little side note there. But you don't just do 4 years in special forces and get out. So we had to kind of keep that secret. But Andy and I had committed 4 years and done. So he says, we're getting close to that time. And we start announcing that about 4 months out so they can process us. And he says, well, where are we going to go? Where's the next adventure? Now, he was our Batman. But one thing he knew about me as Robin is I had more spiritual instincts. Feeling is an emotion from energy in motion, from a thought, from a seed we planted in there. And what you tell yourself all day is so important. My inner dialogue, and I know I've diverted here and I'll get back on track. My inner dialogue for most of my life was, you suck, you're not good enough. Now it drove me, we'll get into that. You gotta be number one. Gotta be number one or you fail. And I could not handle losing. And I'm only a 5'9", at the time, 185-pound guy. I would outwork and outdo everyone. A lot of driven on anxiety and insecurity. So Andy says, where are we going? Now there's 5 of us, like I said, a couple from Minnesota, 2 of us from Oregon, and 1 from New Mexico. I said, I vacationed in Arizona when I was 16 years old. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you did the road trip. Yeah. And I said, I haven't forgot about that place. We went to Lake Havasu. My parents took us down to Lake Havasu at 16 in July. And I said, I don't know where we're at. We went all through California. I said, but I'm going to live here someday. And so we said, what do we have to lose? And a little side note, no offense, ASU at the time, but we said, what is the easiest college to get into? ASU took all 5 of us. Well, and they were happy to take the GI Bill money. So we ended up working for the VA administration through the school as well for a little bit.
Oh.
My buddy stayed on and helping other veterans, right? You know, come out, go, I have no idea what I'm doing. Either do we. Come on in. So, but Andy says, why Arizona? You know, of course, the vacationing here for that week, and you're from Oregon, which is very damp, dewy, overcast, beautiful geography. You won't find better geography than the Northwest, but you have to put up with 9 months of drizzly cloudiness. So I got a taste of the sun in Arizona. Girls wearing a lot of less clothes here than Oregon. And I was hooked. You know, I was 16, but now we're 22. We get into ASU and it's game on, and we get out, we come here, and I've been here 7 months, and I have to go back to EMT school. Some certificates didn't come over, and I thought that was frustrating, but that was nothing, no biggie. I find out after going to the fire station, like I was telling you, Doc, this is me, guys, 22 years old. I can take on the world. I just served in the Marine Special Forces. Like, bring it on. I was in Indonesia. You were in, you know, Tucson. Get out of here, you know? So I am so ready for this. And I walk into some Phoenix fire station because I'm driving by, going back home. Here's a Phoenix fire station. I couldn't tell you what station it was. It was an older rundown one. Walk in, introduce myself, all chipper, and want to be a Phoenix firefighter, you know, and I wasn't this naive, but it really was something like that. I am just out of the Marines. I want to be a Phoenix firefighter. And the guy goes, you and 10,000 other people, you know? And I said, it doesn't matter. You know, I want to be, and he goes, great. He goes, you're not familiar with the process, are you? And I said, no. So he did walk me through the process, but I know when I left that fire station, they laughed at me because I've laughed at that guy too. So, so it goes full circle. When you're like, does they have a chance? Bye. You're like, they don't have a chance, you know? But that set me on the route. I got an EMT school. I took the associate's program, and then hired with Southwest Ambulance, and which is a local ambulance provider, the private ambulances that run 911 and EMS calls with the local municipal fire departments. So I know every EMS and fire operating system does things a little different, but I get on with them. Now, this was my favorite. I had the collared Southwest ambulance shirt on, buttoned, pressed, lined up with my belt buckle. Now, I mean, not too crazy drill sergeant over the top, but muscles coming out, but not just feeling good, looking good. And at school, working for Southwest, and I had run a couple calls for a shift. I precepted, which is, you get some hands-on training while you're out there, and everything was just kind of fine. Now it's the real deal. I'm an EMT on my own, and I've got a little experience from the military. And we walk into what was, I believe, the third call of the day, and I'm with a partner paramedic who I will just say, they've been on the job for a while, and we walk into a normal, mundane, average call, and I'm dragging, pulling the gurney in the apartment after a quick knock. And, I see the crew, and I see the captain who's charting on a paper and clipboard before the EPCR, the electronic stuff. And he looks over at me, and I said, Captain, what can I do to help? And he goes, you can go back outside with your gurney and wait. And it was, I literally looked at him like, he said, I didn't know if he was serious. There's jokers. My dad was a big joker. Military guys are joker. And he looked at me until I turned around, pushed the gurney out and waited. And I said, what just happened? What did I do? And then my medic partner who'd been on for 40 years was like, oh, you'll learn. You got a lot to learn. And what crews you don't do certain stuff with. No, that station, we don't do that. And this, no, they don't like that. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I just want to help out. Let's get this going. No. You know what you do? You drive. Now, that wasn't always the case. You can develop that and go, oh, okay, I guess I'm just a driver. And I would talk to let me fast forward real quick. As a captain, because I was a captain in Scottsdale, and I love that position, best position in the fire service, although I've never been higher than that, so I wouldn't know. But I remember integrating or wanting, we can talk to this, and this is not a chance for me to say how great it was. But because I had experienced that and some other stuff, you know, when you're on the bottom of the totem pole, you got to work your way up. I wanted to integrate our partners as much as I could.
Mhm.
You're a medic and an EMT, you are valuable.
Mhm.
And you represent our organization. We don't represent yours. So
Mhm.
even if your shirt says PMT, Rural Metro Southwest as an ambulance provider, my theory was they think Scottsdale Fire's here. My shirt says Scottsdale Fire. And
Mhm.
every shirt I've ever put on that represented something else bigger than myself, i.e., the Marines, a team uniform,
Mhm.
you don't just represent your name. You know,
Mhm.
my name, Lorenz, Nick Lorenz was on there representing that, but there's a big billboard on back in that Scottsdale Fire.
Mhm.
That's who these people remember. Not, well, there was a PMT guy that was rude to me. So we integrated them, and that was very important. Inclusivity, because you have to have everyone feeling like they're contributing. You
Mhm.
want to check out and just drive for the shift or, you know, that day, I got it. I understand. Got to play the long game in that career. Something I also want to talk about is I didn't do. I'm a sprinter, and you got to be a marathon runner,
Mhm.
and maybe sprint at different times. But I have some things to share there. So I learned really quick. This is the system. So while I'm in school at ASU, I'm working for Southwest Ambulance. But boy, I'm getting laughed at in interviews. I didn't know how to interview yet. Walking in, I just kind of thought I had the resume. You know, I'm in school, I'm a military, like second generation. What am I missing here?
Mhm.
I can talk. I don't have felonies, and I have a pile of rejection letters. My wife and I kept them over and over for 4 years. And I stopped working for Southwest, went to more part time, and started kind of. Oops, I'm sorry, Doc. I did a couple other different jobs, still while testing. But I remember the night I met my wife. That was my last night in Arizona. I had we'd gone out with our friends, our military group, and I said, you know, I think I'm done here. I've taken 5 tests. You know, I'm passing them, but I'm getting laughed out of interviews. I never get a second. You know, I just don't want to waste all my money and do this for 5 more years. Well, and that was the plan. Even talked to my folks. We were all just kind of living together. You know, I mean, how long are we really going to keep this Marine
Mhm.
team together in Arizona? Uh, Turns out that night I meet what is now my wife of 20 years. So, you know, there was a reason we came to Arizona. Um, that's probably the longest I've ever talked without talking about my family. They're the number one thing, and really what was the biggest factor in getting me through the ugly chapter, the ugly time we had. It took its toll on them. Remember, there's always more victims than just yourself.
Mhm.
You have a spouse, you have kids. Everything is upended and affected, and ours certainly was. And we've talked about that with the kids. You got, you know, we're an open book now, but we did have to hide things at the time. So because of their age sensitivity. But yeah, so when I got out, I got hired with Rural Metro. I finally got my first break. I walk in, and I don't know how long we have, so I don't want to be too long-winded, Doc. We'll get into the good stuff. But I said, I'm going to pay for my own, I'm going to go to my own paramedic school because that will help me get hired. I walk into Glendale Community College, do their testing process. Now I'm getting interviewed. And I'll never forget, I'll say her name because she's wonderful, wonderful. Paula Davis was there. And I'm on this panel with Chris Coughlin and big names in EMS and paramedicine. And it's 2003. And I said, she goes, Paula goes, what are you doing? You don't work for a fire department. You don't work for an agency. We can't take you in here. And I said, what I'm doing is I'm living my dream. And I
Mhm.
was good at interviewing. I got better because what I realized about interviewing is talk about something that comes so natural to you. When I promoted, every promotion and every interview that I did successful on, from teams, from ARF teams to that medic school, was the start. What matters most to me? Well, at that time, um, I had just, yeah, that's right. I had just married my wife in 2003 because we met in 2001. And I said, my wife and I just got married, and we have a little bit of a nest egg from our wedding money. I had exactly a couple $100 more, the amount to pay for medic school, write a check. And she goes, you're willing to take your money that you just got to start your marriage and put that towards medical school? And I said, I'm not putting it towards medical school. I'm putting it towards my family. And it
Mhm.
was an investment. And I did great in medical school. Ended up getting hired by Rural Metro at a medical school. And I was the only moron in there. Where do you work? Nowhere. What? Well, I worked for Southwest and I'm going to work with you guys soon. And that was Glendale. And they did their best. I still have a dear friend at Glendale. And they did their best to get hired on. But, I just wasn't in the club yet. Get hired with Rural Metro. I make such a good impression, Doc. And I mean that because that's what they told me with the recruit training instructors, that they said, hey, look, and I can disclose this, look, because you're a paramedic, you're not disqualified from putting in from Scottsdale because you had to have 2 years on or be a medic. But no one in my class, in my recruit class, was a medic because I had paid for myself and graduated.
Mhm.
And that's not completely true. I finished medic school while completing the academy. Now, look, I'm gonna go ahead and sound cool here. I am, because I'm really proud of this. One of the captains, the recruit training officer, says, I don't see how we're going to do this. We have the academy all day, every day, and you're supposed to get X amount of hours for riding. I was at the precepting phase. I needed hours in the field. And one of them says, well, he could leave the academy Friday and go to our busiest station till Monday morning when the academy starts, and we'll take him out there. He could, we'll understand if he's leaving off shift. And I talked about that. I get called back in. That's exactly what we did. For the duration of the 14-week academy, I saw my wife weeknights,
Mhm.
very late. This was not an 8 to 5 academy. This was a rural metro fire academy that I swear to you was harder than Marine boot camp. I am not kidding. I mean, well done. Well done. It was the longest 17, 16-hour days of my life. No, that's not true, but they were very long. For a fire academy. And I'm like, I got this thing in the bag. We did very well. But because of that, because of those, the recruits saw that. And I was voted, inspirational award or something, got a most physically fit award. I've been driven on exercise because that's how I maintained my approval and inner worth is I got to be the best at something. And so Ironman, I'm going to be the best. CrossFit, I'm going to be the best. And anyway, it's a unhealthy obsession that we can talk about. So I snuck through the cracks because of that medic school and got hired by Scottsdale Fire.
Mhm.
Huge. And I got the call on my birthday, June 4th. I mean, just the weirdest coincidence, June 4th of 2005. And we start July 5th. So um, as I start to tell the story about the Scottsdale Fire thing, along the way, looking back, remember, I'm still seeking some inner child approval from my dad. I don't realize because I'm not paying attention. My level of consciousness was very low. My vibration was low, and these are more energetic things. And I'm not going to try to sound too weird, but I am in. Um, because of what happened, my mental collapse, it did lead me down some other wonderful discoveries in life. And
Mhm.
when your whole life falls apart, you question everything. And I questioned everything and then some. So my
So,
inner thoughts at the time, and I know this now because I pay attention, were very defeating. Were constantly and it's not just you suck. I had guilt. I had guilt over everything. What I didn't realize is PTSD was starting to show its head. We would go on a traumatic call. I would take it personally. That's the other thing. Very personal, not traumatic as in, oh man, this blood and guts were hard. That's not my issue, Doc. It's never been goriness. It's always been sounds. It's always been those parents looking me in the eye, begging me to save their kids and whatnot. I'll hear the tones drop or red, light, the tone from the station. I'm like, ugh, get jittery. So now when I got on and
well,
I back,
Nick, you know what
yeah,
I want to ask you a couple questions actually before
yes,
we get into that, because
thank you, thank you.
I'm thinking what I want to do is I love this whole piece, which is your background, because it builds up to, I think, what we should make a part two.
Okay,
I think let's do this part one, and I want to ask you some questions on part one. When you
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out of the military and you were assimilating back to the community with the kids who were, not as worldly as you because they
yeah,
hadn't been anywhere else, right?
right.
And seeing what you'd seen in Indonesia and other places, how hard was it to reintegrate back to getting into their mindset, which you may have deemed as being more juvenile than yours because they hadn't experienced real life, you know?
Yeah.
How tough was that piece?
That's a great question because I have watched myself, others really, really struggle with this transition.
Hmm.
Again, another unique circumstance. I had a team. I've had a team of support.
Hmm.
And I talk about this on my online stuff, Doc. It's very important that you have a team. It could be one person, it could be a dog.
Hmm.
I would love to talk about my dog, the rescue dog that really helped save my life when I was alone with the wife in school and the kids gone. Still hard to talk about. I was suicidal. That little stinking dog helped me and knew. But yeah, I had support. So when we integrated out, integrated back into the real world, here's what's great about special forces. We don't exactly play by the Marine rules. So we had long hair. We called each other by our first name. We did things the opposite of the Marines, or the military, I should say, and it drove staff sergeants and people outside of our unit nuts. The lifers, oh, those recon Marines. So our integration was quite smooth.
Okay.
We were ready, and Andy and I were a little off. We were a little goofy. We were in the Marines, and I always say we played Marines. After boot camp, here's what the Marines do more successful than the other branches, in case you're wondering. I'm not saying the Marines are superior in any way. They definitely are, and I saw that at other military schools. If you care about looking good, discipline, performance, taking pride. I did see the difference there. Here's where the Marines are successful. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little long-winded. I know we're over time. We'll definitely do a part 2 and 3. And with me talking, it could be part 5. But there are so many aspects of the story. I wish I could just say some PTSD happened from some calls, and I didn't handle it very well. But it's complex, and truly, that C in front of the PTSD really does mean something. But we transitioned pretty smooth. We were done. We were on short timers at 3 years. We
Mhm.
had the best last year of our life, but we partied hard, and
Mhm.
that was the recon thing. You play hard. I mean, you work harder,
Mhm.
play hard, and don't get caught. Whatever you do, don't get caught. That's recon motto. I mean, this is ridiculous stuff, but should we do this? Don't get caught. You get caught, mission compromised. So we had fun. We were just kids playing. Like I said, I had to play a role. That's the first time I realized my whole life was a role, and
Mhm.
we're playing parts.
Mhm.
Dad, doctor, brother to someone. I'm not a captain to my kids, just
Mhm.
dad.
Mhm.
To this person over here, I'm just that person. So everyone's telling us who we are, and we play roles and we wear masks, the theater of life. So I played it well, did very good. We excelled, but boy, were we ready to transition. I would say it almost appeared the only thing you could tell that we did a lot of is we talked weird.
Mhm.
When we had parties, people would go, wow, these guys are nuts. We like to do a little more extreme stuff.
Uh-huh.
We'd go to the lake, shoot guns, drink beer, and drive 4x4s. I mean, kind of some redneck hillbilly stuff, but it wasn't. None of us are redneck and hillbillies, but we just continued to kind of do things that we love doing together.
Yeah.
Camaraderie. And we had 5 of us, and that grew into 7. Some buddies from Oregon came down.
Mhm.
So we really had a platoon fraternity.
Mhm.
I am not the person to ask and talk about a rough transition. Um,
So I
boot
suppose the
camp,
question
boot
is,
camp was the biggest brainwashing. After boot camp, you are brainwashed, but that slowly should fade away, and that's what it did for us.
hmm. And so really the question wasn't really integrating back to these kids that you didn't know, but it was how did you grow up from that 7 or grow up from that 5 to have more individuation so that way you could live an independent life. But does that ever really happen when you share those kinds of experiences with people, where you have bonds for life, with your platoon partners?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting way of putting it. Yes. One thing that I know Andy and I did, and I can't speak for the others. Some went back home.
Mm-hmm.
Andy and I are the only two that have currently been in Arizona and call this home and raised families. We're professionals here. Um, yeah, individualism was big, and that's a great counter to the support and group. And I'll integrate two things. Is one is at home. I was very isolated, and I wanted to be alone. I did not want to see anyone. The only person I saw was my counselor. So when I say group support, I was not social. Now
Mm-hmm.
this was during my mental breakdown, but then transitioning back in, Andy and I just had an energy, a charisma about us. People were drawn to us because we had stories and we were full of life. And we're 21, 22, 23-year-olds were burnt out from 4 years of school. Now what? I'm in debt. Here come these two dudes, buffed out, driving nice trucks,
Mm-hmm.
some tattoos, some amazing stories, bunch of weirdos, but they do fun stuff. We had a lot of friends, but I did not want to be a Marine for life. I wasn't hoorah, devil dog, do or die,
Mm-hmm.
semper fi. No, I am semper fi for life. Semper fidelis, always faithful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, I've lost faith, but I remembered that in semper fidelis. But yes, even when I got on, I used it to get on for sure. You've got to use it to get on. But once I got on, I wasn't a Marine. I don't want to talk about the Marine stuff. I want to be a firefighter. And
Mm-hmm.
so I never talked about it. And when someone asked, I knew they were sincere with the way they asked. And if it was an older person, a captain, a war buff, then I would talk about the military. And that's really when my reputation grew, because it was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. And you did what? But I never wanted to be the Marine. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a Marine. I don't have emblems everywhere. If you came into my house, you would see no Marine stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tattoo. I'm very proud of my time in the Marines, but I'm not going to. And I know some things that went down and happened that shaped me for the good and for some setbacks later in life. My mindset on things that, for example, Doc, let me get this in before we wrap up. PTSD was only, in my opinion, forever. I said this till I was 37. Was only reserved for combat soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had 15 years into the job at the time. I was very well aware of everything we'd experienced,
Mm-hmm.
completely blocked,
Mm-hmm.
completely buried. Why and how? 6 to 7 days a week of exercise once or twice a day. And I hid this for my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't completely out of hand, but not raging. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. That would be not a wise choice of words. I had become an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And gambling addict. So addictions right there with it. And boy, I had to hide those. And I was what was called a functioning alcoholic, which meant I had rules on it. I hid and secretly drunk, but that's how I coped. Getting off shift, I wouldn't drink in the morning, I had kid stuff, but it was like 5 o'clock and get it on.
Mm-hmm.
And then to drink socially, I'd have to go hide and drink more because it would take so much more just to get numb.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started gambling, anything to take away from what was going on at work. And so I remember one of our guys was being treated for PTSD. And we were there to support, see a buddy. And he leaves the station one time. I'm kind of doing a reintegration, getting back involved. And I said this out loud. I said, I freaking get it. Yeah, I didn't say freaking. I said, I don't get it. We do this stuff all day. Been doing it for 15 years. You've got 20, you've got 10. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
How is this affecting someone? Now, watching your buddy's head get blown off, and not even that traumatic, it could be something else.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I didn't understand one single event, a person witnessing a car wreck. I didn't understand. You got beat up,
Mm-hmm.
you got verbally abused. No, you don't have that. And I said this stuff out loud. So Um, anyway, kind of went off there in a little bit, and I
No,
apologize.
but I think that what you said is probably one of the most important things, which is there are a lot of people in the world right now that operating as a first responder that do not believe that they have the right to have post-traumatic stress disorder
The
because they
right.
haven't earned it.
Yes,
You
well
know,
said. The right.
and so I think that there I think is probably one of the more important things for people to hear is that post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't have to happen because you were on an MOS where you were an infantryman and you were frontline and center. It doesn't mean that you have to be on a 50 cal, you know,
Yes.
actively engaged. It could be the mechanic that's back taking care of vehicles. This could be the maintenance person that had friends that went out and never came back. It could be a whole bunch of different methods of service that people were engaged in,
Yes.
where people, you know, didn't feel like they should be able to have the, you know, the right to have post-traumatic stress, but
Right.
they did. So it plays out in so many ways.